As said, I am Britt Burner of Burner Law Group, and I am here today. Thank you to the West Hampton Beach Library. If you're in West Hampton like I am, you just heard the 12 o'clock sound go off from the fire department. And we're here to talk about aging in place. Aging in place is a term that a few years ago started popping up as a buzzword. What are we talking about when we talk about age in place? We're talking about people being able to grow older in a healthy and safe environment, and in place usually meaning in their homes where they choose to be. And this is one of the largest fears that a lot of our clients come in with is how do we make sure that as we get older and as our needs potentially increase because of physical or cognitive disabilities, how do I make sure that I have provided that I can stay where I want to stay? And that is done a few different ways. One way is with proper estate planning documents, and we're going to get into that in a minute. And the other way is through proper financial planning. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, I'm just a lawyer, but certainly speaking with the financial advisor about how to make sure your assets are sufficient so that you can live the way you want to live for the remainder of your life is very important. Quite often, we need to do a mixture of estate planning and financial planning, and we work very closely with financial advisors and accountants of clients so that we can assist them in making sure that the assets they do have are protected and handled in a way that they can live the way they choose to live. So when we talk about aging in place and we talk about advance directives, often these are documents that you sign in advance of needing them that give information about how you want your health care to be handled. So most specifically, we are talking about a healthcare proxy and a living will. So a healthcare proxy is a document that says who will make medical decisions for you if you are deemed incapacitated by a doctor and cannot make decisions for yourself. The lack of capacity is an important part of the healthcare proxy because if you are the healthcare agent listed on someone's healthcare proxy and you do not, and that person is not deemed incapacitated by a doctor, you don't have any power under that document. So it really turns on the person being incapacitated. And so when we have this healthcare proxy in place, we want to make sure that not only does it name who will make decisions, and it's one person at a time, and you can have multiple people in succession, but you also want to make sure that it says that that person knows your decisions regarding artificial nutrition and hydration and can make those decisions on your behalf. And these are often end-of-life decisions that are very important, that your agent know what you would pick in a certain circumstance so that they can choose the right thing for you when you can't speak up for yourself. When we do a healthcare proxy with clients, and we put this in the living will as well, we often put in a line that to the extent possible that our clients wish to live at home rather than in a facility, as long as it doesn't create an undue burden on friends and family. And certainly finances do come into play there. But the intention to remain at home is right there in our documents. And we try and put that in as many places as we can. Again, because I would say 99% of our clients feel very strongly that to the extent that they can stay home and that it's medically appropriate and safe, that's where they choose to be. The healthcare proxy has two witnesses. Be any two people over the age of 18 that actually witness the individual sign the document saying that these are their wishes. And it cannot be somebody being named in the document. So we really try to find two totally independent people who can be the witnesses. I signed my first healthcare proxy as I was going into surgery for an appendectomy years ago. And I believe my two witnesses was a nurse in the ER and the person who was mopping the floor next to me because it was very late at night. They were cleaning up. And those were my two witnesses. So any two people over the age of 18 that can attest to the fact that this is what I said I wanted. The next document is a living will. A living will has more substantive information about the types of treatments that you may want or want withheld if you are in an irreversible state with no reasonable expectation of recovery as determined by a doctor. So if you are in a vegetative state, a persistent vegetative state, or if you are in a state where you can't return to meaningful life, do you want your agent to withhold certain treatments? Many people confuse this document with a DNR, a do not resuscitate order. A DNR is actually a medical order. It's a doctor's order signed by the doctor saying that this person should not receive cardiopulmonary resuscitation if they go into cardiac arrest. So the cardiopulmonary resuscitation is actually something that is listed in the living will as an item that you would not want if you were in this position. So the other items that are often listed, and you can pick and choose how you feel, but some people say, I wouldn't want any kidney dialysis if there was no hope of recovery, certain cancer treatments, antibiotics, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, and other types of treatments if they were only going to serve to prolong someone's life and not keep them out of pain. We want to put as much in these documents as we can to tell your agent and the others around you what your wishes are for when you get to this point in your life. But we don't want to make it so restrictive that they can't make adjustments or changes based on maybe what a new treating physician says or changes in how medicine is working and all of that. So you want to be very careful with the language that you put in these documents. Those two documents don't have to be done with a lawyer, but they're often done with a lawyer, and we are usually signing those documents with clients when they're signing their other estate planning documents. The other advance directive that many people will sign is called a MOLST form, MOLST, Medical Orders of Life-Sustaining Treatment. A MOLST form is another physician's order. Like the DNR, the Do Not Resuscitate order, the MOLST form is a form that you sign in consultation with your doctor. And not only do you sign it, but your doctor also signs it. And it takes the information from the living will and the healthcare proxy, and it gives more specific answers. And very often the MOLST form is something that's signed once somebody is more advanced in age or is clear on what a certain diagnosis is. And they can say in what circumstances they want to be brought to the hospital, in what circumstances they do not want to be brought to the hospital, who will make decisions, what types of decisions they want that person to make. This is on a hot pink form. That's actually a form that is created by the New York State Department of Health, and your doctor should have this form. And it will follow you. So if you're aging in place and you're at home and you're brought to the emergency room, then that form, that original pink form, should go with you to the emergency room. And if you're admitted to the hospital, it's going to go upstairs with you. And if then you go to a rehabilitation facility to recover before going home, it's going to follow you there, that same original pink document. And then it's going to follow you back home. Often when clients are living at home, especially as they get more advanced in whatever disease they have, or as they're getting closer to end of life, they might have what we call a non-hospital DNR. So it's a do not resuscitate order. Again, that's signed by the doctor, but it's specifically meant for those who are living at home and receiving care, oftentimes hospice, in the home. Now's a good time to talk about hospice. So what is hospice? Hospice is a level of care that is provided for most people through Medicare. So Medicare is going to pay for hospice services. It's going to pay for a nurse to come into your home. And there's a line that can be called throughout the night with questions. And the idea behind hospice is that this is end of life. Somebody has been designated by a doctor to be likely to have less than 6 months to live. They have a terminal illness. And the hospice care is provided to keep somebody comfortable and to keep them out of pain, but not to prolong life. And so hospice is often a very important part of the plan for those that are aging in place who are staying at home as they get towards the end of life. Now, not everybody is on hospice for less than 6 months. Now, the doctor has to say that you are likely to have less than 6 months to live. However, many people will live beyond the 6 months. And as long as the doctor believes that death is likely to still be somewhat imminent, then the doctor can certify that hospice should be renewed. I have also had clients who've been on hospice who've come off of hospice as their condition has improved. And that's going to be something that you do in consultation with the doctor and the hospice staff. Many people also don't realize that hospice does not cover home health attendants 24/7. So there's many people who are at home on hospice care, but they also either privately pay or have Medicaid covering the cost of a one-on-one home attendant to help care for them. So hospice, again, is a really important part of the plan for many. And they're right in our neighborhood here in West Hampton. There's East End Hospice. They have a great thrift store if you want to check it out. And you can call them if you have any specific questions about hospice. And there's plenty of other hospice in the area who can answer your questions. The other document that people often sign is a power of attorney. Now, power of attorney, unlike the other documents I discussed, does not require that somebody be incapacitated for it to be used. So if you sign a power of attorney naming an agent to act on your behalf to handle financial affairs for you, then that person can act under that document as soon as they sign it and have it notarized as well. So if you sign a power of attorney and you don't want the agent to be able to act immediately, you can hold back the document and not have them sign it until the time at which they need to act or some later date when you're ready for them to sign it. But a power of attorney is going to be very important because as we talk about these different types of care, there's a healthcare agent maybe who's making a decision about the level of care, but you need to make sure that there is somebody empowered to sign the contracts, to sign up for the type of care, and to pay the fees that might be associated with various levels of care. Or if you're applying for Medicaid, somebody who can assist with the financial implications, for example, making sure your income is protected on a monthly basis, perhaps transferring some assets out of your name, and also handling the gathering of all the documentation necessary for a Medicaid application. So a power of attorney is going to be very important for somebody who is trying to live out their life at home and age in place, because that document is going to give another person the authority to handle the financial affairs and to gather all the financial information to make sure you can get the care that you need. Many clients will ask us how we feel about whether or not they should have long-term care insurance. And for younger clients who are still potentially eligible to purchase a new policy, my response is always that you should be speaking with a professional that sells long-term care insurance to find out what it's about, what can be offered to you. If you qualify, there are underwriting requirements that are health-related requirements similar to that of a life insurance policy. And you want to make sure that you can afford what the premiums would be. So I've had many clients who've looked into it, and for either the health reasons that they have, where they have some poor health that makes it either impossible to get coverage or incredibly expensive to get coverage, their response to me has been, I can't afford those premiums. Whereas for others, they have been able to afford the premiums and they've decided as part of their financial plan that it's a good idea. And so it's very important that you look into whether or not long-term care insurance is a good idea for you to see. And it's not based on what was best for your neighbor or your cousin or your sister. You should really get individualized advice for your own situation. Long-term care insurance can often pay the cost of a home health aide, of a nurse to come in the home, physical therapy or occupational therapy in the home that may go beyond what Medicare is going to cover. It can pay for assisted living, and it could also pay for nursing care, nursing home care. And so again, you want to find out what your benefit would be, what the coverage would be, how long it would last for. Often they have an elimination period. So it might say you have a 90-day elimination period, meaning that once you're in need of services, the first 90 days are not covered, but then they'll pick up and pay after that. You want to see if they'll pay directly to a certain provider, if there's enough providers in your area that contract with that long-term care insurance company that you feel you'll be able to get the care you need. Again, these are all questions that I'm proposing you ask to a long-term care salesperson or insurance person who sells these products, because it can be a great product for you. You just have to get your personal information. And there's a lot of changes that have happened in the long-term care market. So for those of you who may have looked into it with a parent or for yourself 10, 20 years ago, you're going to find that there's a lot of different options available now that weren't available then. And so it's a good thing to look into. Once you have all your documents in place, your healthcare proxy, your living will, your power of attorney, potentially you've done some protection planning where you've maybe put your home or some of your other assets into a Medicaid asset protection trust to make it outside of your name for Medicaid purposes. Many get to a point where they're looking for the Medicaid program to cover the costs of long-term care. So for example, we have a client who is recently broke a hip, went in for surgery, went to a rehabilitation facility to get better, and is now going to be released back home, but cannot provide for her own needs on a day-to-day basis. She will need assistance with certain things like showering, making sure she's preparing meals, eating the meals, cleaning up, grooming, light housekeeping, needs assistance walking. These are activities of daily living, and that's what Medicaid will cover if you are financially eligible. And Medicaid in the home, we call it community Medicaid, is a great program for those who financially qualify, who need this level of assistance. Because quite often, home care can be very expensive. And if you don't go through an agency, you could be opening yourself up to a lot of liability if you hire someone privately and there's an injury on the job or something along those lines. And so you want to make sure that you're doing it properly to protect yourself and the person. Perhaps if you're the power of attorney, you're protecting yourself as power of attorney and also the person that you're serving. And so the Medicaid program is a great way to do that. Now, we do have problems in some areas, especially the East End of Long Island, getting a home care agency that contracts with Medicaid that has the availability of home attendants. And so the important thing to look into is who can be your home attendant, and are there ways that we can get around a lack of workforce in certain areas? With our clients in New York City, that's less of an issue. And a lot of people say that's a transportation difference. How spread apart things are on the East End, and if somebody doesn't have a car, it might be difficult to get there. But there are programs available. There's one called the Consumer Directed Personal Assistance Program, and this is a program in which Medicaid can pay any person who signs up through a Medicaid fiscal intermediary to provide care. So for example, if you have a friend or a neighbor or someone from your church or your synagogue who is assisting you, and they used to stop by once a week and drop off a meal and chat a bit. And then maybe they started staying a little longer and then a little longer. And now they're there 5 days a week for 6 hours a day. Perhaps this person wants to sign up with the Medicaid program to be your home attendant through Medicaid and get paid for doing so. And that can be really helpful in those hard to staff areas when you don't necessarily have a certified home health aide through an agency who can assist. And to apply for community Medicaid, you have to have less than $15,900 in assets. So if you take an individual who owns their primary residence, be it an apartment or a home, and they own a bank account with $15,000 in it, a checking account, and they have a retirement account with $200,000 in it, that person is eligible to receive services for home care Medicaid. because that retirement account does not count as an asset for Medicaid purposes in New York. The $15,000 in the bank account does count, but it's underneath the $15,900 limit, and so that person is eligible. Now, I also said that that person owns their primary residence. So what we often want to do is move that primary residence out of the individual's name, usually to a trust, and there's different types of trusts depending on the circumstances. But we want to make it that not only do you qualify for Medicaid on the front end, but that upon your death, the asset is outside of your name, because then it avoids what we call probate, which is when a will has to go through the courts to be followed. We want to avoid that court procedure because that's where Medicaid can be a creditor and can put a lien on the property. And so even though you might be eligible for care with that property in your name, we want to make sure that we're adding the protection of there not being a lien on it at your death. And so the individual that I described would likely put their home into a type of trust. They'd keep their checking account as is. And for their retirement account, they would just have to make sure they're taking distributions. Now, the exact amount of the distributions that have to be taken will vary based on what county you're in. If you are in New York City, they require that you take the required minimum distribution as determined by the IRS. However, in Nassau and Suffolk counties, where we also practice, that rule is a little bit different. And for certain individuals, they have to take more than the IRS requires as a required minimum distribution, and it's based on Medicaid's own life expectancy table. And that is another piece of income. Again, it's not an asset. It remains outside of the $15,900. So that person is now eligible for Medicaid. We can apply for them to receive the care, submit all the financial and personal information to show who they are, what their assets are, and to tell Medicaid they're eligible. And then they're approved. And many times people are approved with what we call a spend down or excess income or an overage. These are all terms that we use to describe any income that that individual has that goes above what Medicaid says they're allowed to have. This year, Medicaid in New York State says that an individual can have $904 of monthly income. And these are for those who are aged, blind, or disabled. So the bulk of our clients tend to be over 65 years old. They're receiving Medicare. They're what we call dual eligible. So they're Medicaid and Medicare eligible. Medicare is still their primary insurance. They're adding on Medicaid to pay for these additional services. Often home health aid is what triggers this to happen. So those individuals keep the $904. So let's take somebody with Social Security payments, a required minimum distribution from that retirement account, and some have a pension. Some people have a trust that shoots off some investment income to them. Whatever your sources of income, Medicaid adds it all up. It all gets deposited into that checking account every month, just like it always did. But now that you're on Medicaid, 904 of it stays in that bank account on a monthly basis. You will pay any health insurance premiums that you have. So if you're paying for a Medigap supplement, for example, you'll pay that Medigap supplement. And the balance of your income goes into what we call a pooled income trust. This is a type of supplemental needs trust that is administered by a charity that is meant to take the excess income of those that are on government benefits and protect that income so that they can use it for themselves, but also keep the government benefits in place. And so again, it's a pooled income trust. And so let's say in my example, somebody had Social Security and their required minimum distribution, and they have 904 that's staying in their bank account, and then they pay their health insurance premiums. And let's say they're still about $1,000 over the limit. That $1,000 will go to the pooled income trust on a monthly basis. There'll be a small administrative fee to the trust administrator, and the balance of the money will be available to be paid for household bills. Now, this could be rent, mortgage, maintenance, utilities, cable, cell phone, food, clothing, anything for the benefit of the individual who is on Medicaid can be paid by this trust. And that is the way that we keep people at home, aging in place with the care they need, but also maintaining the use of all of their income to pay the rest of their bills. Because obviously, if we're living at home, we still do have those daily expenses, those normal expenses. And Medicaid is another layer of health insurance, and that's going to pay for home health aides, for transportation to doctor's appointments, for certain services that my Medicare maybe isn't covering, but it is still medical insurance. And so you still need the use of your income on a monthly basis to pay the rest of your bills. Now, you may have heard that there is a potential look back, as they call it, coming to the community Medicaid program. Now, the community Medicaid program is currently states that you can transfer assets out of somebody's name and there is no look back. So what does that mean? Well, we're here on May 11th, and if somebody takes $100,000 and moves it out of their checking account and moves it to their daughter, and on June 1st has less than that $15,900 in their name, they can apply for community Medicaid to pay for the cost of their care. Why? Because there is no look back. There is no period of time. The Medicaid program says if you gifted assets away during that time, we're going to find you ineligible and we're going to assess a penalty. And so this has been very helpful for people who didn't do advanced planning to be able to get care they need and still have the use of, and still be able to protect some of their assets. A lot of our clients, especially if you take somebody who has about $100,000, take $100,000, they're allowed to keep $15,900. So let's say there's about $85,000 left, and they do transfer it on May 11th to their daughter. But it takes 2-3 months for Medicaid to get in place. Well, the daughter may need to use that money to pay for mom's care during that time period because they don't have coverage through the Medicaid program. And so it's very important for people to be able to do this in order to deal with that time period, that stopgap period often. The change in the law last April states that there will be a 2.5-year look back for community Medicaid. And that will only go back to October 1st of 2020. So if that were in place right now, and it hasn't yet been implemented, but if it were, it would only be transfers back to October 1st. It would not be a full 2.5 years yet. It's being phased in. But we're being told that the earliest that this will come into play would be January 1st of 2022. And we're currently waiting for the federal government, CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, to approve New York's request to add in this look back. And it is unclear if that is going to be done or not, and that's to be determined and check back for more information on that. But if it does come into play, it's going to make advanced planning for those that want to age in place even more important. Because in my example, where we could move some money so that the daughter could use it for mom while we were waiting for the care to come in place, is not going to be possible at the last minute anymore. So it's going to be very important that people do advanced planning if this comes into play. And so again, just keep an eye out and watch for this change because it's going to be a big change. The other change in the law that is likely to go through is a change in how Medicaid does assessments for how much care it will provide. So often people come to me and say, well, what does Medicaid give? What will they give me? And it is supposed to be an individualized process and answer. So once you're determined to be financially eligible, you will then have a series of nursing assessments in which it will be determined what level of care you need. Now, one individual may need 24/7 live-in care. Somebody else may only need 4 hours a day. And the idea is that these individuals will get the care that they need. So the official answer to what will Medicaid give me is Medicaid in New York State is supposed to give you what you need. Now, obviously, we have clients who need extra advocacy to really show what it is that they need. And that's going to be an important part of this process, is having somebody who teaches you how to properly advocate for the level of care that you or your loved one needs in order to make sure staying in the home really is a safe option. You're going to want to make sure that the home is prepared for staying at home. You want to make sure that there's handicap accessible bathroom if that's necessary, a safe showering or bathing situation, that there aren't stairs that can't be maneuvered by the individual. And the way that we adapt each person's house, again, is going to be different and individualized based on what the home is and what their needs are. And so looking forward to how do I make sure that in the future I can age in place, part of that is making sure that your home is set up in a way where it's going to be safe for you to do so. So back to those new changes to the assessments. When a nurse comes in and assesses the level of care, they're changing the threshold for how they determine that Medicaid is going to provide care. And the new rule will be, and we don't know when this is going to come into play, but we expect it will, that for those with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia, only Alzheimer's or dementia, for those two diagnoses, you will need to show that you need assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. And you would show that you need supervisory assistance with 2 or more activities of daily living. Now, for all other individuals seeking care through the Medicaid program, you will need to show that you need physical assistance. Now, not supervisory, physical assistance with 3 or more activities of daily living. This is a pretty high threshold. Those of you who've had to look into long-term care insurance or access long-term care insurance for yourself or for another know that quite often the long-term care companies require that you show 2 or more activities of daily living and needing assistance with that in order to receive care, the money from the long-term care policy. So here we're saying that for anybody other than those with Alzheimer's or dementia, you need physical assistance with 3 or more activities of daily living. So that's really raising the bar pretty high for who gets care. And so those who are in that lower level, who are starting to need care, but aren't yet at the 3 or more activities of daily living that they need assistance with, are again going to have to prepare in advance for how they're going to pay for that care when they haven't yet hit that Medicaid threshold that will eventually be the way things are handled once it is implemented. So it's very important, again, planning ahead. And aging in place, to me, is really just about taking control of your future, control of your own care, control of your life, and designing it to be the way you intend for it to be. That includes planning, again, with your attorney, with your financial advisor, perhaps with an accountant. For many, it's using an aging life care professional, also known as a geriatric care manager, who's quite often a social worker who specializes in aging in place and being cared for in the home, and making sure that you have prepared your home, your family, yourself, your finances, and your legal life for aging in place. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'm happy to answer any questions. And if you can't stay on for questions, we hope you join us for our next seminar in the future. And I hope you enjoy this beautiful day.
I don't see any questions. Thank you again, everyone, for taking your time out of your day and joining us.